The modern dating game is one of the worst misuses of human beings and their emotions, as well as the destruction of the very first part of the family unit, where young women and men use each other sexually and go from one partner to the next, trying to get as many sexual partners as possible, and really destroying the very first parts of the family unit. Look at this research showing what when young people start having sexual activity and how many partners someone has before they marry, as well as the normal flirting game and the physiological research that has now come out showing what the physiological problems are with having multiple partners.
Vicky, we live in this hookup culture where much of our society, they think that they can just go on one night stands and just have consequence-free relationships, sexual relationships.
Well, it's interesting because that's a lie that abounds, that we've come through the media and other things to believe there's no consequence to sex. And as long as you're contracepting or whatever, it's all fine, but we don't really understand how it is our bodies work. We need to recognize, for instance, that we as women undergo profound changes when we have sex with a male, that there are many things that change. It takes our body 6 months to make the adaptation to the sperm of our male partner, because before that we are in an autoimmune reaction. Our immune cells are testing. What is this? Is this an infection? What is it? Our body comes to conclude that this is our sexual partner and now has made an adaptation. The reality is that this allows us women to be without consequence in terms of when we conceive children with this male, our body recognizes that this is with our partner. We carry cells from every child we ever conceive, so we carry the DNA of our partners the rest of our lives. It's an interesting question. If I've had multiple partners and perhaps conceptions with multiple partners, that what might that mean to my body in terms of the immune system? Because I will now literally be carrying the genetic material of my partners contained in my children. We don't know what the long-term consequences of that are. The reality is that seminal fluid, which we think of as kind of a carrier, it just kind of gets the sperm where it needs to go, is in fact biochemically very active. There are more than 30 different compounds that are contained in the seminal fluid. Different kinds of sugars, things like zinc, which would enhance our, as women, autoimmune system so that we might not contract diseases from pathogens that would be present in intercourse. All these different kinds of substances. There are also many, many hormones that are there. Luteinizing hormone, we think that's a woman hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone, that's a woman hormone. 13 kinds of prostaglandins. Some other things like dopamine are there. Why? Because we women absorb that material and we're changed forever. Every time we have intercourse with someone, if we absorb any of that seminal fluid, it's in our system. We're changed in a very real and concrete way by this sexual intimacy that's there. Furthermore, the brain chemistry in both men and women is triggered with sexual intimacy. And we believe that because I say this is just a sexual encounter for pleasure, I'm not going to be changed, that it works. Our brain never gets the message that this has no consequence. The assumption on the part of our body is that sexual intimacy always has consequences, always has meaning. And as soon as we have this intimacy with this person, we trigger brain chemistry. We trigger, for instance, oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone both in men and women. There are other feedback systems there that make the brain feel good. Men in particular get vasopressin. This is a male hormone. We women have a little, but it's predominantly male. And when we have sexual intimacy with someone, what happens to the male is this hormone now makes him have a preference for this female that he just had sex with. Hooking up, this sense that it doesn't matter, is physiologically an impossibility. Of the millions of sperm that come into our bodies, there's maybe only 20 or 40 that really get to the point of the egg. So there's this protective factor there. We want to get the egg getters where they need to go. The role of the killers has to do only when women have had multiple partners in a short period of time. These are very poisonous little sperm, and their intent is to kill the sperm of the other male. So effectively, there is a sperm war that goes on in the woman's body when there have been multiple partners. Also think about this in terms of the adaptation of her autoimmune system. Who's my partner? Her immune system must be on a real state of arousal here because there's sperm from several males, and her body is trying to make this time adaptation. And what happens, this is purely a question that I don't know the answer to, but what happens when I've had many partners and my body hasn't made this 6-month adaptation to the recognition that this is my partner? And people are surprised by, how did that come to be? But the awareness that we're different. To know also that we women are very conditionable at the time of ovulation. This is some media effects research, and they had shown an erotic movie to women who were ovulating, and all of the women had an erotic response to this movie. They showed the same movie to women at other phases. We have different stages of our cycle. We have the follicular stage when the little follicles on our ovaries are developing. We have the ovulation stage when one of the follicles breaks loose and the ovum is released in our body. And then the last stage is the luteal phase, when the little place on the ovary where the ovum was released becomes a major chemical factory, keeping the ovum alive to see if there is a pregnancy, and if there is, then keeping the baby alive until the baby builds its placenta. But this awareness here that during ovulation we're arousable. They showed the same movie to a group of women at these other phases, and there was a consistent response, but it was basically a very stupid, dirty movie. No erotic response. But the woman who saw this film once during ovulatory phase had an erotic response showing the movie. Now, again, at any point in her cycle. The anthropologists talk about the fact that this is perhaps why, if we have sex with Mr. Wrong when we're ovulating, we now are hooked to Mr. Wrong. We all know that Mr. Wrong leads to Mr. Wrong number 2. So this awareness of how this give and take, this dance, if you will, between men and women is so important. And it's so critical that we as women and men understand there's a lot more going on in our bodies than we've ever been told, so that we can, make really good choices about this. Do I want my body to be changed by this male? If I'm going to have sex with him, I am going to be changed by him. And we don't even know what some of the long-term consequences of this are, but we know that she's absorbing the material. And, how do I want to live my life? How do I want to be changed by my partner? What consequences might there be if I make these choices where I have, repetitive sexual partners? We don't know what some of these long-term consequences are. Again, what we think is simple, what we think is without consequence, in fact, has serious long-term consequences. And, the more I learn about this, the more I'm in awe that nature, God, has built us in this way to be complementary to each other, that we truly are changed by our partner and really become one in terms of this.